Kalkadosh Boker Or Bekiim Bahalacha 5. This is Siman 32. Siman Lamed Bet Halacha Kaf Tet. So this is going to be 29. We're talking about now writing gloves. Wearing gloves to do with the writing of the Sifrei Torah, Tefilin Mezuzot. So it says, En lichtov Sefer Torah or Tefilin Mezuzot, ve'af letayeg tagim b'batei yadayim, or even to do the tags. The tags is the crowns on the top with the gloves. Af she'oseh ke'mechamat hakor hagadol, even if it's freezing cold and you're doing it because you're cold. It's not kavod for the Sefer Torah. That's what's brought down in the Bekiim Yosef, which is Rav Chida. Yesh matirim, and some people do permit it. Here, if you look at the footnote 24, the Kol Yaakov brings down, cited Rav Chida, who found the handwritten response from Rav Moshe Provincial. So he's ruling that it's forbidden. And cited the Imre Shefer ruling that it's permissible. In the newly response of the Rav Moshe Provincial, he wrote, because of the great sanctity of the Torah, of the Sefer Torah, it must be treated with enormous awe and respect. Therefore, the scribe must not wear gloves on his hands and not even half gloves on his fingers. Right? Anyone who does so is guilty of treating the Torah with a mundane item. As is brought down in the Torah, his body will be treated with disrespect by others. This can be compared to the halacha forbidding a kohen from handling the korbanot with gloves. He says, why? Because it's the same thing. So he says, this rule applies to all sacred items, but especially to the writing of the letters of the Sefer Torah, the Tagim, right, which is the most sacred. The Meshef, however, wrote that this is only a stringency, and therefore, if he's too cold, he's allowed to do so. Okay, the author of the Mishra had no access to the response of Moshe Provincial, and therefore he was unaware of the opinion by wearing gloves while writing, right? It indicates a disrespect for the Sefer Torah, giving the impression he does not want dirty hands with the ink that he writes. So therefore, obviously, that's why. Okay, so what about the methods of writing? So halacha 30, right? Lamed. Rabbi mina sofrim, the majority of the sofrim nowadays, kodvim sivrei Torah mezuzot of tefillin al yedei shulchan or, which is basically going to be a shulchan or. It's like a table, right, which has a light on it. Shmanichim HaShulchan Aruch kamin shkufiot, they put on top of it shkufiot, which are like laminations, right? It's a here. Look in English. It says it's a printed version of the scroll that they wish to write on the glass panel, and then they place the parchment on top, and then it shines through. So therefore, they're able to just like copy it, and it's enabling them to see it very, very well. Okay, so he says there's no halachic problem with this method of writing, as long as the scribe declares that his intention is to write the scroll for the sake of Misad Tefilin Muzar Torah scroll, as long as he declares that his intention is to write each of Hashem's name for the sake of the name of the sanctity of Hashem, the scribe should keep a printed version of the scroll next to him, besides the one on the glass panel, since some spots of the parchment might be too thick or dark to enable him to see the printed word underneath or the parchment. So therefore, if he's only going to come and relies only on the paper on the glass panel, he might misspell a word because he misread the writing under the parchment. Okay, so that was halacha lamed. Halacha lamed aleph says, okay, tefillin o mezuzot shenasu b'tfus or b'tzilum photography or electronic psulin legamre afilu b'diavad. So it's going to become pasul even b'diavad. This just actually happened recently in Eretz Yisrael. They caught a whole ring thing of that they caught a person that he came and he was selling mamash printed tefillin. right? ואין יוצאים בהם ידי חובה מצד כלל. והיות שבדין ישנם רמאים המפיצים תפילין מזוזות שנעשו בדפוס ובצילום, יש לעורר את הציבור להיזהר בדבר. They should be very, very careful, right? So therefore, people have to be careful nowadays of what they're buying and when. Look in the footnote 25. It says a Shulchan Aruch rule that if someone etched the text, right, of a get onto a board, a stone, or a metal plate, the get is kosher. Likewise, if someone etched the reverse form, right, the text onto a thin metal plate, it's going to be the get is also kosher. If someone chisels away the surface of the wood or stone, right, the get remains in the relief form. However, he says the get is not kosher. He says if someone banged down the surface of the thin sheet of metal, so that way the text appears on the top, then he says it's not kosher. The source of these halachot of the Gemara in Mesechet Gitin. So he says that specifically you have to write the get, right, and not that it's going to be written out on its own. That's called chok tochot, right, and chak tochot and chak yerechot. The Turei Zahav, he ruled based on this principle that if someone produces a Torah scroll using printed press, it's kosher. In his time, the books were printed by arranging metal pieces displaying letters in reverse. In tracks on a board, ink was spread on the metal letters, and then the board was pressed onto the paper of the parchment being printed, leaving the letters formed on the entire page. So he says that's going to be, he says since the printing created the letters and not the act of spaces between the round letters, it's an act of writing. Rabbi Menachem Azariah Mifano and Kolchas ruled that this process is kosher for producing a get, but when it comes to producing a sacred scroll, it's not good. It's not considered printed. Okay.